if it works.
Yeah, if it works.
We'll find out from Doreen here in a minute. So, I don't know how long I've known Elaine, probably for a couple of years. I certainly have heard about her for many years in Christian circles and counseling, and I think Bill Jens first told me about you when you were counseling from Hope Point, Yuba City. Elaine is somebody like the rest of us that gone through good times, difficult times, and I think one of the most powerful things we can say when we follow Christ is after we go through those challenges that we keep moving forward, drawing closer to Him, and Elaine sets a good example in doing that. So with that said, a warm CBA Christian welcome for Elaine Reed.
Hear me okay?
Sorry, I don't have my man voice on. I don't know whose phone this is.
Fine.
Okay. So I wanted to start by saying that what you believe matters. What you believe matters. What you believe about yourself, what you believe about God, what you believe about other people, what you believe matters. And so when I was told that I was going to be able to come and speak, there was like, when I first talked to the guys about doing this back like in November, I had just gotten done going to Francis Chan's house church training program. And I was like so excited. And then I did this other thing, and I was so like, oh, I want to talk about this. And I did this other thing. I was like, oh, I want to talk about this. And they're like, yeah. And so I got all these things. And then twice last week, somebody said, well, we want to hear your testimony. I'm like, okay. And then I have like new ventures, new ministry that I'm starting. And I'm thinking, okay, so how do I go back to before I was born to 15 years from now in 20 minutes of time? So that's my goal, okay? So 4 or 5 years ago, I went to this seminar down in Santa Barbara, and I made a goal for myself. They made you sit down and write goals for yourself, where you're going to be. So my 10-year goal was to make the phrase identity abuse a household phrase. So everybody say identity abuse. Food and all, identity abuse.
Identity abuse.
People say, what is identity abuse? Right? So identity abuse is when who you believe you are is damaged. So if you think about all the various ways what you believe about yourself can be damaged, when that happens, that's identity abuse. Now, the purpose then is to say, how do I get people to know that, especially in Christendom, that the struggle that you have in your relationship with God is created by this lack of awareness of who God says you are and the ability to receive that. When your identity is abused, it damages your ability to receive truth. I would say that again. When your identity is abused, it damages your ability to receive truth, because the abuse is so deep and is so, what you believe about yourself happens so young or it's so profound, your ability to receive truth is damaged. You can't receive truth. It doesn't feel right because you're so damaged, okay? So I labeled this my ministerial midlife crisis. Okay, so when I think about where I am and what I'm doing and what he said about all the trauma and struggles and things that we do, that I'm having a ministerial midlife crisis. And so trying to be able to say, what am I going to do now? But then you only understand that when you hear where I came from. And so I was born to an unwed atheist mother, teenager. Okay, so she was unmarried, atheist, puts me up for adoption, and then I was labeled hard to adopt because my mom is half Asian, half Chinese. So I was literally labeled. So when you went to go look at all the babies up for adoption, I was labeled hard to adopt. I was put in that section. So now I'm unwanted and hard to adopt. So my labels early on are, you're unwanted and you're hard to adopt. So my identity at the very beginning, before I even knew anything, I was already labeled. And if identity abuse blocks truth, and that's what I'm raised in, then you can see how those messages over time will build up. So I did get adopted. I was the middle child of 3. And I had an older brother and a younger brother, and none of us were related. So my older brother had blonde hair, blue eyes. My younger brother was half Filipino, so he had black hair, brown eyes, and then there's me with brown hair and 3 9s. Once upon a time, I did have brothers. And so the 3 of us, it was rather entertaining because we looked nothing alike. Nothing alike. And we just tromped around as best friends. And we were actually raised in, so I should say they were also foster parents. So those people that raised us were also foster parents to medically needy children. So we had kids in our house all the time, babies up through 5, 6 years old, something like that. However, my parents were physically and emotionally abusive, very neglectful. They never would hug us and say, hey, we love you. I mean, we were like, literally we'd tell each other, we were like furniture. They owned us. We were these things they had, and they raised, and they stuck us in Christian school, and they did, so they owned us, and they did the parenting thing that way, but we were never loved on or told that we were valuable or embraced in any way. And they were also very physically violent. And I know they say, well, in the 60s that was normal, but I told my brothers one day, I said, Dad will only spank you till you cry. And they're like, nuh-uh. I go, yeah, and I'll prove it. And so the next time we got in trouble, he spanked me with a belt, bare butt, 12 times, then I cried and he stopped. So then I went back, but I know it sounds really horrific. I think it does anyway for you guys, but to us it was like we got spanked so much that I don't even recall what it was I was getting spanked for. It was just to prove to my brothers that, see, this will happen, that. I mean, it's almost inconsequential as to what the problem was because we were always in trouble. And then on top of that, I was sexually abused by my dad. Okay, so I start off unwanted, labeled poorly, then adopted in this menagerie of children, and abused the entire time. And so, again, what the messages that I'm receiving about my value are very, very negative. Very negative. So my identity, my true identity never gets to flourish. Okay? And so again, identity abuse blocks truth. I really want you to remember that. So when other people are around you and they're having a hard time receiving truth, you can ask yourself, where has their identity been harmed that's keeping them from being able to receive truth? Okay? So I was educated and obedient. Okay? We went to church, went to Christian elementary school, went to church regularly. I got good grades. I played musical instruments. I participated in 4-H. I had my own horse, raised rabbits, had show rabbits, did the whole 4-H thing. So I was smart and eager to learn, but I'm broken. Okay, so there's something about me that's kind of a little broken. I was unloved and taken advantage of. So I got socially disconnected. So I'm a little on the weird side, right? When being weird in middle school is not a good thing, right? For anybody, I don't care who you are. I would keep my friends away from the house. It's interesting that later on in life I'd ask my friends, what did you figure out? And they said, well, we knew something was wrong, but we didn't know what. Because I would always tell my friends, don't come over. You don't want to come to my house. But never tell them why. But especially my girlfriends. It's like I had one friend spend the night one time my entire life that I recall. I was exposed to drugs and then more sex in public school and my neighbors and that sort of thing as time went by. So I became lonely and addicted and promiscuous. So out of all of that, there was a time where I just gave up on school. I thought, who am I trying to please anymore? I was a straight A student for a long time, and then my teachers, I had a situation that I won't go into, but my teacher was just unbelievably shockingly rude, and I thought, why am I trying anymore? Why am I trying? And so I had 81 hours of detention, and I was so proud of that. I thought I got more hours of detention than anybody else in the history of the school. And I was proud of that. I thought, because I just didn't care anymore. I'd rather hang out at school than go home. And so the more hours of detention I had, the more I got to stay at school and go home. So again, identity abuse blocks truth. So where in all of that is someone comes and say, hey, Jesus matters, I'm going to be going, right? I've been in church. I was raised by the world's best hypocrites. My mom was the organ player. My dad taught Sunday school. He was on the church board. And I was raised in Christian school. I know the books of the Bible by heart. Okay, so I was raised by the best hypocrites. So my dad went to jail for molesting someone else. And when the police came to talk to me, it was the first time in my life I'd verbally actually told anybody what had happened, and I was 20 years old. And my mom called me immediately thereafter and called me a liar. How could you say those kind of things about your dad? So again, the message is ongoing. So I was rejected and angry and confused. So I went to my pastor And it's just the story. I mean, if the story is just so messy, someday I'll actually write it down. But my family was still going to church and everything, and we're all actually going to church together. This is how sick this stuff is when it's happening inside, and we don't talk about it. So I went to my pastor for help, and I said, I think I need counseling. And he said, well, go home and make a list of what you want to work on. And so one of the things on the list was my relationship with my brother, my relationship with my parents. And he goes, well, where do you want to start? And I said, my relationship with God. Now, mind you, that was not on the list. I had no inclination whatsoever to talk to him about my relationship with God. I wasn't convicted by it at all. It just came out of my mouth. And he just asked me, well, where's your relationship with God? And I'm like, I don't know. He says, well, did you ever ask Jesus into your heart? And I'm like, well, when I was 5 at VBS, and I was crying because my brother made me go to the altar, and the guy who came to pray with me got mad because I would stop crying. And that was it. That was the only time. Nobody ever asked me. Nobody ever looked me in the eye and said, hey, where are you spiritually? And he said, well, we can go take care of that. Went down to the altar and prayed. And it's like the following day, so that was on a Tuesday, Wednesday night of prayer meeting, I went to him and I said, hey, what would you say if I told you I wanted to be a missionary? And I'm verbatim. He looks at me and he says, don't sell your house. Everybody says that. And he walked away and he never talked to me about it again. And the following Sunday, all those hymns that I hadn't heard my entire life made sense because they were about me. I'm like, oh my gosh, all these songs actually are about me. They're about me and God, and God, He forgave me. And it's like this blinders came off. So now I'm 21 years old. For the first time in my life, understanding all of this stuff that I've been raised with all of my life. And I thought, and I got angry, which I know is a really bad reason to go into ministry. But I got angry because I thought, why, for 21 years, nobody ever stopped and said, hey, where are you at? What are you doing? Do you know God? What's it like for you? Do you have a relationship? And I thought, we need to change things. So one of my missions at this age and stage in life is to not leave the church in the same condition it was when I found it. I mean, that is my goal. And my hope is to be able to go and say, how do I help believers become emotionally mature so that they can enjoy a mature spirituality? If you're not emotionally mature, then you're going to be hung up on all sorts of stuff, and you're not going to be able to relate to God, you're not going to receive good things. And so that's my end goal. When I die, I really just hope that that's what they remember. So I was shut down by my pastor. I was angry and confused, but I'm still intrigued and hopeful, because I was like, I'm angry and confused because the church says this and that, and then I'm like, but still there's a God and there's this whole new life, and what do I do with that? So church hypocrisy, everybody knows, is there, all sorts of ways and means. Marital toxicity, been married multiple times, they all went south, it was bad, don't want to get into it. Then I had poor emotional health, so you got to look at the history of everything that I went through, right? So I got all this jacked up childhood, right? And I had an abortion when I was 18, in and out of drugs, very promiscuous, sold drugs on the school campus, I was just a wreck of a person, right? And then I find God, but that doesn't help my mind, okay? I mean, in some people, there's an automatic healing and they have that kind of stuff, but for me, I was really messed up. And so I ended up hospitalized for depression and suicidality 5 times in 1 year. 5 times in 1 year, okay? I was 30 at that point. So you figure between the time I was saved and that point, I'd had 4 kids by that point, and I was a stay-at-home mom in this tiny little town out in the middle of no man's land, and I was literally falling apart. And so when I tell people I've been there, I've walked the walk, I know, I've been there. I mean, a wide variety of things, and I don't ever minimize somebody's strain, pain, when they're really chronically depressed. I know what that feels like. When you just don't get it, doesn't matter. I mean, I know what that feels like. And to come out of that, I became a single mom of 4 kids and went to school full time. Because I felt called to the ministry, I knew that by leaving my kid's dad, I would never go into ministry. That was going to be off the books. So in our denomination, they allow for female ministers, but if you're divorced, no. Okay, so it was just off the books. So I made a commitment of my sanity and move on. And so I thought, if I go into counseling, then maybe I can go and help people. Right? Go back into church and help people. And so I became a full-time student. and never a minister. So that's my thought at the time, right? So again, I'm giving another label. I finally surrendered to ministry. I had people, I have these really rough relationships with theology, doctrine, different denominations, this kind of stuff, and different pastors are where they draw the line. You know, each pastor will draw a line in the sand of what they'll allow in their church, regardless of their denomination, right? There's just lines that they draw, and everybody's different. And I had left the church, and I said, you know, this is dumb. And I had this little woman who was there when I first got saved, who kept running after me, going, when are you going to come back? When are you going to come back? I'm like, I don't need it. I'm not going to go to hell. I'm not going to, I don't need it, you know? So I, you know, I found later that they actually changed the rules about divorced women in ministry. She's like, you know. And she kept bugging the pastor in front of me, when are you going to let her speak? I'm like, yeah, what? You know, don't do that to me all the time. And then eventually my conviction was, I knew that God had said, you have specialized experience and knowledge that can help so many people. And by not giving into some of the constraints of the church, you're actually not gifting other people what you have. And so at the age of 42, I decided, okay, I'll do that. And I went back to the church, recommitted, volunteered back into ministry, and genuinely just surrendered all. I thought, you know, whatever hoops I got to go through, I'm going to do it, and because I know there's a higher calling. So I was in the midst of getting my master's degree for counseling while going to Bible college, and I was teaching at that Bible college while going to the Bible college while getting my master's degree at the same time, while being a single mother of four, because I don't do enough all at the same time. And so I did get licensed as a licensed marriage and family therapist. I also got ordained in 2013. So when you go through the Church of the Nazarene, there's like, you have to do so many years of service as well as your education and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of things to get into. So, but then I'm still wondering, going, okay, where do I fit in? What does this look like? And what does this all mean? So I have all this education and all this experience, and I would sit there, oh, I forgot it. I knew I was going to forget it. I have this paper on the back of my door in my house. I sat one day and wrote down, I compared my life to somebody who lives in India in a tin shack. So if you've ever seen the movie Slumdog Millionaire, where they do the pan out of all the shacks, I envisioned myself in there versus my life. And I wrote down all the things that I have that I'm appreciative for. You know, books, transportation. So like I tell people, I could grab my purse, drive down to the airport right now, whip out a credit card, and fly anywhere in the world. I have the capacity to do that. Might not be the brightest thing to do right now, but I have the capacity to do that. Where somebody who's living in that shack with a hole in the ground for the cooking, they can't do that, right? So I wrote on this list all the things, and I would say, God, look at all that I have, and I want to use it for you. How do I take all that I have and use it for you? And I would just be frustrated day after day after day of what do I do with all my talent, skill, experience, and stuff, you know? And so I feel like, so then I really hate talking about this, but then when my marital status changed, I was actually removed from ministry. And they said, you need to step down immediately. So I lost my marriage, my ministry, income, stat, everything. All like, boom, like all in the same week. And so I'm numb, because I'm like, okay, what does this mean? And I realized, in light of all that you can take away my state licensure for marriage and family therapy. You can take away my ordination and say we will no longer ordain you in the Church of Nazarene. We can take away your graduation certificate or diploma from Sac State saying we're going to withdraw your master's degree because of some defect in something that you learned. But they can never take away what I know to be true, or my experiences, or my relationship with God. They can't ever take that away, ever. And the realization of that was so powerful for me, because that means that I can go anywhere, anytime, and look you in the eye and say, God loves you. I know it for a fact, and I can prove it to you. Because if he loves me, he can love you. That's right. And it has to become, and so the last time I speak down at the mission, I said, we are Christian. Not I'm trying to be a Christian, or I practice Christianity. It is who I am Christian. And as I walk through my days and walk through my life, I experience this, and I invite you to join me in that journey. So as we all sit here as business-related, ministry-related people, this is who we are as a community. We are Christian. And then we go from here and we infiltrate the community with that knowledge and experience. So that was very encouraging for me. And so when I think about how he said, we go through these trials and tribulations, how do we keep moving forward? Well, I had to decide, do I choose to believe my faith is real? My religion is true. My God exists. Am I going to choose to believe that, even when my circumstances stink? Am I going to choose my faith? Is it who I am? Am I Christian? Or am I exercising a faith that I'm only going to hang on to when it looks good, feels good, and does right? And that was very hard for me in the midst of losing so much stuff. And so while I'm jobless, but I was still doing counseling, so I had, which is really weird. You can't be a pastor but you can counsel. Like, I can mess with people's minds, but you can't mess with their spirituality, right? Is when I actually got to doing the book. And so I walked, this guy said, you have lots of time, you have lots of money, but rarely both. And I thought, well, I got lots of time, so I'm going to sit and I'm going to work on my book. And so that's how that came to fruition. I spent a lot of time looking at videos of motivational speakers and entrepreneurs and life coaches and that sort of thing. And really looking at, what can I do with who I am? How many more hoops do I have to jump through to just be who I am and be able to express that out into the world today? And so coming to this point in life, I realized that I can do that and do it well and proudly. I can proudly be a Christian. I can proudly say, wow, look at he still loves me today, and he loves me more than anybody else. And if you look at the history of my life and say, okay, my identity, the world was trying to tell me something about my identity that was so not true. Someone's having a party in the kitchen. And so I did go down to Francis Chan's church. That was very exciting. House church, the house church experience is just phenomenal. The basic premise is you love on your neighbor. They actually have people who will move their families to San Francisco into the worst areas purposefully to love on the neighbors. And then they have house church. So you find a neighborhood that's really bad and you move your family there, you live there, and then you get to know your neighbors. And you love on your neighbors, you get infiltrated into the lives of your neighbors. And when they're intrigued about you, then you witness to them. And you spend time with them. And once they get to the place where they accept God and you've broken the word open with them, then you invite them to your house church. You don't invite them to church as a scapegoat for, I don't really want to talk to you about God, but if you come to church, most of us are freaked out about, okay, how do I talk to somebody about God? I'll just invite them to church. We need more people in church. I mean, you hear that all the time. It's like, no, we need more people to actually go and talk to people and look them in the eye and say, hey, I want to know you, love you, and get you to know my God because he loves you more than I do. And then you invite them to church, which is more of a group. So the concept being that, so if you guys were all in a house church together and Dave came and said, man, I've been witnessing to my mailman, and his name's Bob. And every week when we have house church, we're like, hey, so how's Bob coming along? He's like, oh, so this week Bob this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I went with his kids and we played soccer, blah, blah, blah. And then the next time he's like, oh my gosh, so Bob and I actually sat down and wrote the Bible together and we prayed, and he actually let me pray for him. And then it's like, yeah, so Bob actually wants to accept Christ. So every time Dave comes to house church, we're like, how's Bob? So when Bob finally shows up, we're like, hey, Bob! It is so good to bring you into and it's a completely different philosophy of how we do church. And so I needed to share that, okay? So that's why when I went, I'm like, oh my gosh. And so they actually took us to the Tenderloin. They told us, go to this address and find a place to park and then go pray for people. So we actually drove into the Tenderloin. We're walking the streets and there's people literally, we're walking up saying, hey, can we pray for you? And they're shooting up as we're sitting there and they're doing all sorts of things out there. But I would say probably 50 to 60% of the people who walked up and said, hey, we're just out here praying for people. Would you like prayer? I said, yes. And I didn't want to leave. We were out there for 2 hours and it went by so fast. And I didn't want to leave. And I thought, what are we doing? Where are we going? Where are we reaching and touching people? And so, so I also have an affiliation with a Messianic Jewish congregation. And that's a whole other long story about how I got affiliated with that. But the first time I was driving down there on a Saturday, so they do service on Saturdays, I'm thinking to myself, I'm so on fire about house churches. And I'm a Protestant female pastor, which is like bad in like half the denominations on the planet. And I'm driving an hour one way to go to a Messianic Jewish synagogue. What is wrong with me? Right? And so I go in and I sit there, and I don't, they sing a song in Jewish, and then they sing it in English. They pray prayer in Jewish, the prayer in English. And they explain it all along the way so you don't feel like totally stupid. But then the rabbi gets up and he starts doing his teaching, and he says, I've been really convicted about the fact that we don't spend enough time getting to know each other outside of this church. That we don't know each other spiritually. We don't spend time breaking bread together. We need to do that more. And the more he talked, the more I thought, man, it sounds like he's been reading that Francis Chan book that I just got done reading, right? And he goes, because Francis Chan says, and he picks that book up from the table, and he says, da-da-da-da, about house church. And that was the first time he talked about house churches with this congregation. And I happened to be there. I thought, okay, that's weird. And so the thing I love the most about it, if you ever get an opportunity to go, is that the first thing they do every single week when you come in is they say, okay, we are here to bless God. We are not here to be blessed by God, but we are here to bless God. So please rise and let's bless God. And for probably 35 to 45 seconds, there's complete silence. And then he says, we bless the Lord, O my soul, all that is within me. We bless your holy name. We bless, and for like an hour, we just say, God, you are the creator of the universe. There is none like you. Who can compare with you? I mean, for over and over and over again, it's just, God, we are just so amazed by you. And I'm just standing there going, wow, I get to just honor God. It's not about music style, what I want, how soft it is, warm it is, this and that and the other. It's like I get to actually honor God for an extended period of time. And every time I go, I am so glad I did. I can't explain it to you. So if you ever get a chance to go, go. If you ever have Jews for Jesus come to your church, it's really important for you to understand that these are people who have believed they have honored God with everything in their being and all the rituals in their entire life, all their holidays, the way they eat, what they don't eat, what they wear, how they do business, is honoring God without Jesus. And so when you bring Jesus into that, their eyes are open. So I went to Seder, and I had two Jewish men, raised bar mitzvah Jewish, who had never been to a messianic service of any kind. And just watching them going, wow, there's Jesus in this, and there's Jesus in this. And it was just fascinating. They were both believers, but they'd never been to something that combined the two. And so again, if you ever do that, the sensitivity that you need to have of watching that happen, it's not just, hey, let's just sit back and watch this guy do this thing. Understand where they're coming from. And so when my husband first came to church with me, I kept thinking, how does he see what we're doing? How does he see how we represent God? Because they're all about God, but they just don't do Jesus. And so it really made me think a little bit harder about how we sing our songs and what we say. And yeah, so anyway, that's a whole other story. So through all of this, I realized that I ignorantly believed that if I followed through all the hoops with the church, I would have my nice little church in the foothills, and I'd be my little pastor, and we have this little congregation, and we do little thing. I did. And that's my little dream is that someday, I'll get there. And people, I don't know this is going to sound bad, but people look at me and they go, why are you in Hallwood? And I'm like, and it's not that Hallwood's bad, but they're like, you have so much talent, so much skill, so much ability. Why are you just sitting there? And I'm like, because God hasn't told me what to do. So I know I'm out of time. Why did you do this to me? So I went to this conference and did this thing and met these people and all this kind of stuff. I ended up Mother's Day on Collins Lake by myself because my kids are all out of town, in my boat, going, God, I have all of this and I just want to use it for you. I'm tired of searching. And so what came out of that moment was that if I worked with clergy women, okay? If I work with clergy, if I went to my denominator and said, hey, I'm going to work with clergy women, I'm going to lean into that, I'm going to do workshops with them, nobody's going to argue with me. And they're all going to applaud, and the men aren't going to be freaked out. She's doing something, they're going to go do it, And so I came from that, and people say, oh, but you're cubby-holing yourself. I said, but it's a foot in the door. If I can start traveling, going, doing stuff, and saying, okay, I'm going to just start doing self-esteem repair workshops. And so out of that, there's been a lot of discussion. But so on your table in the center, there's a little brochure that talks about life coaching. So I've decided to do life coaching and get out of counseling. And there's more brochures on the table. So what that does is that keeps me from having to stay within the state of California and only be confined to the state of California. And I can go anywhere and talk anything. Okay, so this little card here, I made this because I thought, you could probably even use this for your own business. How can you help me? How can you help? How can you help what's happening? And so the first thing I thought of is speak life into me. Now, I don't have family in the area, and I have very few friends.
Ditto.
And people freaked out when they're around me. They're like, oh, I'm like, no pedestals, please, because I fall hard. But speak life into me and say, hey, we believe in you. We're excited about what's happening in your life. Speak life into that for me, because you are my family. And I tell that to the people in the church, the rest of the church in the Yuba City Marysville. You are my family. To speak life into that. You can pray that I have courage. Don't give up, because sometimes, you know, that the situations get weird and hard. Volunteer. So I could really use a lot of help. If you want to do that, that'd be great. Be a sponsor. So I know I've had 2 people volunteer to be sponsors, and so sponsors like, you know, you give money and I market for you kind of stuff. Host an event. You can have me come and speak at your other events or at your church. I would love to come and talk to your congregation. We have so many congregations here. Or your business, if you have like a business luncheon or something, or you know somebody, or you're in some other type of organization and you need a speaker, you have to come. Or you can donate. So you can actually go to my website on the very bottom of the homepage. You can donate. You can donate $1 once, or $50 every month, or however much you want to donate. And so my goal is to do life coaching, host one-day, full-day events that are interactive, intensive, where I actually do some of the stuff that you've seen me do, like tell the story, this kind of stuff, in cities around the country. And then out of that, be able to create a nonprofit where all of the donated funds will go directly to helping pastors get counseling for free. So that's the long-term goal. And so hopefully I've crammed that 70 years all into a short enough time frame. You're asking. That's sort of, thank you.
I'm even missing some of the previews of coming attractions to listen to the rest of your story, how exciting those movies are, you know, before it starts. I think we can all agree that was super powerful. As a matter of fact, I think we need to, in the future, do, you know, a 1-2 punch, and you can do back to back. But the way you share your story, and, you know, just you know, the story.